The meal that shouldn't have happened. The metal food slot slammed open with a sharp clang, a sound every inmate inside Pelican Bay security housing unit knew far too well. It was 5:17 p.m. on a cold February evening in 2012, a year when tensions in the SHU were quietly reaching their peak. The air smelled like bleach, concrete dust, and old steel. The hall was silent, except for the distant hum of ventilation and the echo of boots slowly approaching. Inside cell B-123 sat Marcus Hale, a man who had survived 8 years in the SHU, 8 years of silence, isolation, and the same 4 gray walls. But that day, something was different. Marcus had been waiting. His heart was pounding harder than usual, and he didn't even know why. A gloved hand shoved a tray through the slot. But this wasn't a tray Marcus recognized. The usual Pelican Bay SHU trays were beige, cracked plastic, sometimes cold, sometimes lukewarm. But this one was metal. Heavy, quiet, wrong. Marcus froze. The guard didn't say a word. He just pushed it through and walked away. No eye contact, no warning, no explanation. Marcus crouched slowly and pulled the tray closer. Under the dim fluorescent light leaking through his door window, he could finally see it clearly. On the tray sat a single scoop of watery oatmeal. No bread, no fruit, no beverage, no protein. Just one scoop. Barely more than 2 spoonfuls. This wasn't a mistake. This was a message. For a second, Marcus didn't breathe. He knew Pelican Bay's history. He knew the stories. The rumors whispered from cell to cell through vents and pipes. Meals could change without warning. Portions could shrink. Temperatures could drop. Items could disappear. In the SHU, food wasn't just food. It was pressure. It was leverage. It was control. Marcus lifted the tray closer, and that's when he saw it. A small black mark scratched into the corner of the metal. A mark he had never seen before. Almost like a sign. Almost like someone wanted him to notice it. His stomach tightened. This wasn't random. This tray wasn't for inmate B-123. It was for him specifically. Suddenly, a loud banging sound erupted from 2 cells down, followed by someone yelling, "They're starting it again! Check your trays. Check them!" Another voice screamed through the air vents, "They're starving us out!" Marcus's hands shook. His mind raced. His breath grew shallow. This was it. The thing every SHU inmate feared. The shift. The moment when meals became messages, and hunger became punishment. He looked back down at the tray. The oatmeal had already cooled into a thick, pale gel. Then, another clang. His door bolt vibrated. Someone was unlocking his cell. Marcus stepped back, heart pounding, pulse racing so hard he could hear it in his ears. The steel door handle twitched. This wasn't the time officers normally opened SHU doors. This wasn't medication time. This wasn't shower rotation. This wasn't rec yard movement. This wasn't normal. A voice spoke through the crack in the door, cold, flat, and unfamiliar. B-123, step back. Marcus swallowed hard. Something was about to happen. Something directly tied to that tray. Something he wasn't prepared for. The door began to open, but not all the way. Just enough for a shadow to appear. A shape, a silhouette, someone holding something he couldn't quite see. Marcus's pulse exploded, because right then he realized this wasn't about the meal. It was about what the meal was warning him about. The metal tray had been the signal, and now the real reason for it, the real danger, was standing right outside his cell. Cut to black. The silent rules of Pelican Bay. The door stayed cracked open no more than 3 inches, but that was enough to throw Marcus's entire world off balance. In the SHU, doors were either open or closed. There was no in-between. That tiny sliver of openness meant something was off-script, and anything off-script inside Pelican Bay security housing unit meant danger. Marcus took 2 slow steps back, raising his hands just enough to show they were empty. The silence outside his cell felt unnatural, almost too still. The usual background noises, officers shouting orders, metal doors slamming, radio crackling, all seemed to have faded. Only one sound remained, the soft, rhythmic breathing of the shadow behind the door. Then the voice came again, low and controlled. B-123, you know why we're here. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't know if he was supposed to. Inside Pelican Bay, responding to the wrong voice at the wrong time could turn a situation sideways in seconds. The figure on the other side shifted, and a faint beam of light hit Marcus's face, the edge of a flashlight. The officer never fully revealed himself. Just the light, the silhouette, and that voice. You didn't eat, the voice said. Marcus's eyes darted to the metal tray still sitting on the floor. Of course he hadn't eaten. The oatmeal wasn't a meal. It was a warning. And apparently the officers already knew it. The voice leaned closer. You know what happens when you don't eat. Marcus did know. Every inmate did. In the SHU, refusing a meal, even if the meal was barely edible, sent a signal. It could mean protest. It could mean resistance. Or, in the eyes of some officers, it could mean defiance. Pelican Bay had unofficial rules, the kind inmates learned slowly over months and years. Rules that weren't written in any handbook. Rules like, Rule number 1, if the food changes, something else is changing. Rule number 2, if your portion shrinks, someone wants your attention. Rule number 3, if an officer comments on your tray, trouble is coming. Marcus stayed silent. The shadow outside didn't. Tomorrow morning, the voice said, you're going to take your tray. All of it. Do you understand? Marcus's throat went dry. Because that wasn't an instruction, it was a threat disguised as an order. The SHU had its own ecosystem, its own delicate balance. And the quickest way to break a man wasn't through violence. It was through food, or the lack of it. The voice stepped back, and the beam of light disappeared. The steel door slammed shut with a kind of force that made the walls vibrate. The lock clicked, then twisted, then clicked again. Triple locked. That only happened when someone was being flagged. Marcus stared at the closed door, trying to steady his breathing. He replayed the interaction over and over in his mind, trying to understand what he had done. He didn't talk back. He didn't argue. He didn't break any rules. So why him? Why tonight? Why that tray? He slowly picked it up again and studied the corner where the black mark had been scratched in. It wasn't random. It looked intentional, like someone carved it with purpose. But why? What did it mean? Just then, a low voice drifted through the air vent near the back of his cell. B-123, you still alive in there? Marcus recognized the voice instantly. Eli, the inmate 2 cells down. Eli had been in the SHU even longer than Marcus, almost 12 years. He knew the system, the politics, the unofficial punishments. And he knew the power of a tray more than anyone. Marcus leaned toward the vent. I'm here. Eli's breath crackled through the metal grate. What did they give you? Just oatmeal, Marcus whispered. 1 scoop. That's it. Eli cursed under his breath. They're doing it again. Marcus felt a chill. What do you mean again? Eli hesitated. You really want to know? Marcus didn't answer. He just waited. Finally, Eli said, back in 2010, they tried controlling a tier with meals. Portions got weird. Breakfast disappeared for some guys. Dinner came late, then stopped altogether for a few. He paused. It wasn't official, wasn't on paper, but everyone knew what it was, a test. Marcus swallowed hard. A test for what? To see who would break. The words hit Marcus like a punch to the chest. Eli continued, voice low and thin. They marked the trays. Same corner. Same scratch. It's not a mistake. If you got scratched metal, they're watching you. Marcus's pulse quickened. Why me? I don't know. But if your tray changed and they opened your door, they are planning something. Don't sleep too heavy tonight. Marcus leaned back on the concrete bunk, the tray still in his hands. The silence in the cell grew heavier, more suffocating, more final. He counted the seconds until the lights dimmed. He waited for footsteps, for another clang, for anything. But nothing came, only the hum of the vents and the faint whisper of Eli's voice. Stay sharp, B-123. This is just a start. Marcus stared at the ceiling, unable to shake the feeling that something larger was building around him, something invisible, deliberate, and dangerous. He closed his eyes for a moment. Then, clang, a sudden impact hit his door so hard it rattled the bolts. Marcus jumped to his feet. Another clang, this one louder. Then again, and again, and again. Someone, or something, was ramming his cell door from the outside. He rushed to the small window, trying to see through the narrow strip of reinforced glass. All he could make out was a blurry figure in the hallway, moving fast, jerking, slamming into the doors one by one. Then he saw it. Not an officer, not an inmate, a food cart, rolling on its own, slamming into doors. Left unlocked. Someone had released it. But why? Marcus backed away as the cart slammed into his cell again, metal clanging against steel. And that's when he noticed something horrifying. The top tray on the cart was identical to his. Same shape, same metal, same black scratch in the corner. This wasn't an accident. This was a message. And Marcus wasn't the only one marked. Cut to black. Hunger as a language. The food cart slammed into Marcus's door one final time, then suddenly stopped, as if someone had grabbed it from behind. The whole way fell silent. Too silent. Marcus leaned toward the narrow glass strip again, but the lights in the corridor flickered, casting long shadows that twisted and stretched along the concrete floor. For a moment, nothing moved. Then came the unmistakable squeak of rubber soles on polished cement, slow, controlled steps heading toward the cart. Marcus couldn't make out a face, only a faint silhouette bending over the tray with the black scratch. The figure held it up, inspected it, and then placed it back onto the cart with careful intention. Marcus's pulse hammered in his ears. Someone knew exactly which trays were marked. Someone was keeping track. He stepped away from the window, breathing hard. Hunger in Pelican Bay was more than an empty stomach. It was a signal, a coded message. A subtle pressure that could turn men into ghosts or rebels, depending on how long it went on. That's when Eli's voice came through the vent again. But this time, it wasn't a whisper. B-123. Listen to me carefully. Marcus moved closer. What's going on, Eli? The scratch on the tray, that's the same signal they used the year the hunger strike started. His voice dropped. If you got marked food, it means they're watching how you react. It means you're part of something now, whether you like it or not. Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. The Pelican Bay hunger strikes weren't fiction. They were real history. 2011, 2013. Thousands of inmates refusing food to protest the security housing unit, the isolation, the deprivations, the endless lockdown. The strikes hit national headlines. They changed policies. They exposed conditions the public didn't believe were possible in the United States. But what Eli was suggesting sounded different. Eli, that was years ago. Marcus said, why would they do this now? Why me? Eli hesitated. Because the SHU doesn't forget, and it doesn't forgive. Marcus ran a hand over his face. The last time Pelican Bay used marked trays, it wasn't to track protesters. It was to find leaders. Inmates who might coordinate, who might organize, who might influence. The kind of inmates who needed to be broken early. Marcus whispered, I'm no leader. Maybe not to you, Eli said, but to them, all it takes is one conversation in the yard. One note passed. One officer who thinks you're planning something. They see patterns even when there aren't any. Marcus leaned back, trying to make sense of it. Everything in the SHU was cause and effect. But sometimes the cause was invisible, and the effect was starvation. Before Marcus could speak again, the vents carried another voice from farther down the tier, a voice filled with fear. They took my dinner too. They skipped 3 cells. Mine had nothing but bread. They pulled the milk off all our trays. Within minutes, the tier erupted in a chorus of panicked, desperate voices. For a place designed to silence men, the SHU suddenly felt alive, a pressure cooker hissing at maximum heat. Marcus felt the energy shift as inmates up and down the block realized something was happening, something coordinated, something deliberate. Marcus sat on his bunk, staring at the untouched oatmeal. Hunger wasn't his biggest fear. Hunger could be endured. Hunger fades. But unpredictability, that was a real punishment. When meals changed, everything changed. And Marcus felt the weight of that truth pressing against his ribs. Suddenly, the overhead light snapped off. Darkness swallowed the hallway. For a few seconds, Marcus couldn't see anything. Not his hands, not the mattress, not the tray. The vents went quiet. Even the distant hum of the generators vanished. The SHU had gone completely silent. Then, a soft click. A backup generator kicked in. The lights flickered back on. Dimmer, sicker, more yellow, like someone had turned down the oxygen in the whole tier. Eli spoke again, quieter this time. You feel that? Marcus did. Something was changing in the air. B-123, they're shifting the routine. Marcus gripped the edge of his bed. In the SHU, routine was survival. Routine was everything. When routine changed, control changed. When control changed, fear took over. Eli continued. If they are messing with the food and the lights, they are not just testing us. They are preparing us. For what? Marcus whispered. Eli didn't answer. Instead, the vents went silent again, but this time, not because Eli stopped speaking. A new sound echoed down the hallway. Metal dragging across concrete. Slow, steady, rhythmic. Not rolling like the food cart. Dragging. Marcus froze. The sound grew louder. Closer. Every inmate fell silent. The dragging stopped right outside Marcus's door. Marcus pushed his eye back to the narrow glass strip. His breath caught in his throat. A steel box sat on the floor, square, heavy, reinforced with bolts. Two officers stood beside it, their faces hidden by the angle of the light. One officer crouched and placed something on top of the box. The other held a clipboard and nodded. Marcus squinted. On top of the steel box was a tray. A metal tray. A tray with the same scratch in the corner. The officer crouched down, unlocked the box, lifted the tray, and slid it inside, locking it behind two layers of reinforced steel. The officers didn't look at Marcus. They didn't speak. They just walked away, leaving the box in front of his cell door like a grave marker. Marcus backed up slowly, pulse roaring in his ears. Why lock a tray inside a steel box? Why leave it outside his door? What did it mean? The answer hit him like a punch. They were preserving it, documenting it, tracking it. He wasn't part of a test. He was a test. Marcus held his breath as the officers disappeared down the hall. 2 seconds later, Eli's voice returned, soft, fearful, shaking. B-123. I think I know what's happening. Marcus stepped closer to the vent. Eli spoke 3 words that made Marcus's blood run cold. They are selecting targets. Before Marcus could respond, a voice he didn't recognize whispered through the vent right above him. You're next, and you don't even know why. Marcus spun toward the ceiling. That wasn't Eli. That wasn't anyone he knew. That voice came from a different cell, one he thought had been empty for months. And the moment he heard it, the lights in the hallway began to dim again, slowly, deliberately, like someone was turning a dial. 1 click at a time. Cut to black. The marked man. The hallway lights dimmed 1 click at a time, soft, controlled, unnatural, like someone was slowly lowering the sun inside a place that already felt like permanent night. Marcus stayed still, staring at the vent above him where the unfamiliar voice had slithered through the metal. You're next, and you don't even know why. His skin prickled. Voices in the SHU didn't travel easily. The vents were narrow, the ducts twisted and routed in strange patterns. For a voice to sound that clear, that close, someone had to be leaning directly against the other side. But that cell B-124, had been empty since the previous winter. Marcus swallowed hard. Who's there? Silence. Then, the faintest breath. Someone was listening. Before Marcus could say another word, the tier erupted with another loud metallic sound. This time, it wasn't the food cart. It wasn't the steel box. It was the sound of the tier doors locking, one after another, in rapid succession. Chunk, chunk, chunk. The sequential clamping of magnetic bolts. A full tier lockdown. Eli's voice cracked through the vent again, shaky but urgent. They are sealing the block. All of it. They never lock us in this farce unless. He stopped. Marcus leaned closer. Unless what? He whispered. Unless someone on the tier is flagged, Eli said. And not regular flagged. I mean administrative observation level. Marcus's stomach tightened. Administrative observation. The words echoed like a cold wind blowing down a concrete corridor. In Pelican Bay, that term didn't mean discipline. It meant investigation. It meant suspicion. It meant you weren't just being watched. You were being analyzed, studied. And if the rumors were true, it meant officers had designated you as someone who might influence the entire unit. Marcus backed away from the wall, shaking his head. No, he muttered. I've done nothing. I haven't talked to anyone. I stayed out of everything. But the SHU didn't care about what you believed about yourself. It cared about what the system believed. The lights dimmed again, now barely bright enough to see the edges of the doorframe. A low hum vibrated through the tier, as if the wiring inside the walls was straining under new load. Then, from somewhere deep inside the building, a siren blared softly. Not the loud alarm everyone knew. Not the emergency evacuation siren. This one was smaller, sharper, higher pitched. Eli recognized it immediately. Oh no, that's the internal food audit scanner. Marcus frowned. The what? Eli let out a slow breath, like he'd been dreading this moment for years. That siren means they've entered the trays into the system. Every tray is photographed, scanned, and cross-checked. The scratches, the portion sizes, the placement of the food. He paused. They are cataloging everything. Why? Marcus asked. Eli spoke the next sentence with absolute dread. Because they are tracking the men who got the marks. The ones they think might resist. Marcus froze. He suddenly remembered the metal box outside his door, the way the officer placed a scratch tray inside as if it were evidence. The clipboard, the flashlight beam, the silent departure. His tray wasn't a warning. It was a classification. Marcus felt the walls closing in around him. The SHU was a machine, sterile, cold, efficient, and he had just been fed into it like a piece of data. He sat on his bunk, trying to gather his thoughts, when the vent above him carried that unfamiliar voice again, this time whispering with a strange, eerie calm. They marked you early. That's a bad sign. Marcus's heart hammered. Who are you? Silence, then a quiet chuckle. Low, uneven, almost amused. You'll find out soon enough. Marcus stepped closer, palms flat against the concrete wall. What do you know about the trays? About the marks? I know what they do to the men who get them, the voice replied. And I know why they chose you. Marcus's breath caught. They didn't choose me. There's been a mistake. Another soft laugh. Everyone says that at first. Marcus clenched his jaw. Tell me what you know. The vents hummed. The building creaked. Then the voice spoke again, calm and chilling. The hunger strikes never ended. Marcus frowned. What? They stopped on paper. The voice continued, but not in practice. Some men kept pushing. Quietly, secretly. They used food as a message, meals as signals, starvation as resistance. Marcus shook his head. That was years ago. 2011, 2013. Those protests ended. The voice whispered sharply, not for the ones who survived them. A chill ran down Marcus's spine. They are still here, the voice said. Not all of them, but the ones who mattered, the ones who organized, the ones who taught others what hunger really means. Marcus felt the room tilt slightly. The lights flickered again. Eli cut in through the lower vent, almost panicking now. B-123. Who are you talking to up there? That cell's supposed to be empty. Marcus looked up. The voice was still there, still breathing softly into the metal duct. He whispered, Who are you? The voice replied, I'm one of the originals. Marcus's chest tightened. You were part of the hunger strikes. Another pause. I helped start them. Before Marcus could process that, a loud mechanical buzz shook the entire tier. Then, the overhead speaker crackled alive for the first time all night. All marked cells prepare for inspection. Marcus froze. Marked. Cells. Plural. Eli cursed under his breath through the vent. Oh no, they're doing a tier-wide pool. Marcus stepped back from the door. The voice in the upper vent whispered, almost eerily calm. They are coming for you first. Marcus stared at the steel door, his pulse pounding so hard he could feel it in his fingertips. Down the hall, the sound of boots started to gather, a formation. Officers gearing up. Shields. Keys. The clatter of metal rings. The heavy stomp of coordinated movement. Getting closer with every step. Marcus's breathing grew shallow. The lights flickered violently. The entire SHU block hummed like a machine powering up. And then, a red light above his cell door switched on. A light Marcus had never seen before. A light that meant one thing. Target identified. The footsteps stopped directly outside his cell. Keys jingled. A hand grabbed the handle. The lock twisted. And the person in the upper vent whispered, "Whatever you do, don't let them take the tray." Cut to black. The red light above Marcus's door glowed like an open wound in the concrete. It didn't blink. It didn't buzz. It just burned, steady and silent, letting every man on the tier know exactly which cell had been marked. His. The footsteps outside lined up into a pattern. Marcus could hear it. 4, maybe 5 officers. One heavier set by the way their boots hit the floor. One lighter, quicker, and one with that slow, deliberate walk, the kind of walk that said this wasn't their first time doing this. The handle on his door rattled once. Then a voice echoed through the tier, firm but measured. B-123, step to the back of your cell. Face the wall. Do not approach the door. The sound came not from right outside his door, but from the speaker in the ceiling. That meant this wasn't a casual check. This was logged, recorded, official. Marcus's eyes flicked from the door to the tray. The oatmeal had stiffened into a pale lump, but the black scratch in the metal corner was still there, sharp and obvious. That tray had become the center of his world in less than an hour, and the voice in the upper vent had just said, "Whatever you do, don't let them take the tray." Marcus swallowed hard. His thoughts raced. If he refused to move, they'd use force. If he tried to hide the tray, they'd search the cell. If he tried to destroy it, would that make things worse? B-123, the voice repeated through the speaker. This is your final instruction. Step away from the door and face the back wall. He needed time, just a few seconds. He bent down, snatched the tray off the ground, and slid it quickly under his thin mattress. The metal scraped against the concrete a little louder than he wanted, but there was no time to fix it. He stepped back, pressed his hands flat against the rear wall, stared at the chip paint that had been his only view for the last 8 years. The lock on his cell door released with a heavy chunk. The door swung inward. Boots entered first. 4 sets, exactly as he'd guessed. He could feel eyes on the back of his head, scanning him, assessing him, judging whether he would cause trouble. "Keep your hands where we can see them," one officer said. Another one walked toward the bunk. Marcus could hear the mattress springs creak as they pressed down on it. "Trays not here," the officer near the bed muttered. Marcus's stomach knotted. They knew exactly what they were looking for. The heavier officer stepped closer to Marcus, close enough that Marcus could smell the faint mix of coffee and cold air on his uniform. "B-123, he said, tone flat. "You were given a meal. Where is it?" Marcus kept his eyes on the wall. "I ate it," he said quietly. It wasn't a lie. He had eaten some of it. Just not all, and not the tray. The officer near the bunk lifted the mattress. Marcus heard the sound instantly, metal sliding against concrete as a tray was dragged into view. "Found it," the officer said. Marcus's chest tightened. The heavier one behind him took 2 steps back, as if expecting a reaction. A lunge. A fight. But Marcus stayed still. In Pelican Bay, rushing at officers didn't change the outcome. It just sped it up. The officer holding the tray spoke again. "There's a mark." They weren't hiding it. They weren't pretending it wasn't important. The tray wasn't just a dish. It was a file. "Log it," another voice said. He heard the click of a camera. 1 photo. Then another. Then a third. The scratch, the portion, the tray's condition, all captured, all stored, all recorded. "Bag it," the officer said. Marcus heard the crinkle of plastic as they slid the tray into some sort of evidence sleeve. They moved with the care of people handling something sensitive. Dangerous. Not because it could explode, but because of what it represented. Hunger. Control. Obedience. The heavier officer stepped around to face Marcus now, though Marcus kept his eyes straight ahead, focused on the rough texture of the concrete. "B-123, you understand why we're doing this, right?" he asked. Marcus didn't answer. He actually didn't know. Not really. All he had were guesses and whispers. When Marcus stayed silent, the officer continued. "Certain inmates on this tier are under review. Food refusal, altered portions, abnormal patterns. All of that gets monitored. You've been flagged as part of that review." Marcus finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "I didn't refuse a meal." "Doesn't matter," the officer said. "It's not just what you do. It's what you're given. Who gets what, when, and why." The words sank into Marcus's mind like stones dropped into deep water. It's not just what you do. It's what you're given. He thought back to every tray he'd received over the last week. Had something been off? Had portion sizes changed and he'd just not noticed? Had the pattern started earlier than tonight? Eli's words echoed in his head. The hunger strikes never ended. The heavy officer stepped away. "Cell clear," one of them announced. "Subject compliant. Tray recovered and tagged." The officers filed out. The door began to close. Marcus felt something twist in his chest. They were taking more than a piece of metal. They were taking the one piece of proof that anything strange had happened at all. He spun around without thinking. "Wait!" One boot paused in the doorway. The officer with the bag tray turned his head slightly. Marcus took a breath. "What happens now?" he asked. The officer stared at him through the narrow gap. "Now," he said calmly. "Now we watch." The door slammed shut. Locks engaged. The red light above his door stayed on. Marcus stood in the middle of his cell, breathing hard, feeling smaller than he had in years. Not because of the officers, not because of the lockdown, because of the word watch. He turned back to the wall, his eyes drifting up toward the vent. The unfamiliar voice was waiting. "They took it, didn't they?" it said. Marcus didn't answer right away. He walked over to the bunk and sat down, the springs creaking under his weight. His hands were still shaking. "Yes," he finally managed. "They bagged it, took pictures, logged it." A soft inhale came through the vent, like whoever was on the other side already knew that would happen, but still didn't like hearing it. "Then they moved to the next phase," the voice said. "Next phase of what?" Marcus asked. "Selection." Marcus clenched his jaw. "Selection for what?" The voice in the vent hesitated. "For who gets broken," it whispered. Those words sat heavy in the air. The SHU had a way of breaking men, some quietly, some explosively, some through time, some through surprise. But the idea that there was a system, a process behind it, was worse than any rumor Marcus had ever heard. "How?" Marcus asked. "How do they do it?" "With food," the voice said. "Always with food. First they change the portions. Then they change the schedule. Then they start dividing us. Who gets more, who gets less, who gets something different entirely." "That's already happening," Marcus said. "Guys on the tier are shouting about missing items." "That's a beginning," the voice replied. Marcus leaned back on the bunk. "So what's next?" "The special trays," the voice said. Marcus frowned. "Special how?" The answer came slower this time. "They don't starve everyone. Not at first. They feed some men regular meals. Maybe even better meals. Hotter food, larger portions, maybe a dessert here and there. And they do it in full view of those who are getting less. The trade-off. The boots were moving fast now. Sharp, urgent steps that echoed like metal on bone. They weren't coming with trays this time. They weren't coming with clipboards or cameras. Marcus could hear it in the rhythm. This was a tactical walk, a move with intent walk. Eli whispered through the vent like a man bracing for an earthquake. They are coming to your door again. Get ready. Marcus looked down at the tray, the full breakfast they'd given him when everyone else only got scraps. The milk carton was sweating. The eggs were still steaming. The cake square leaned against the side like an accusation. This wasn't a meal. This was a wedge, a divider, a baited hook. Someone wanted the tier to notice, to see him as the one getting fed while they were being starved. Marcus nudged the tray away with his foot. The boot stopped outside the cell. The red light above his door flickered once, then went solid again. B123. The voice outside called. Step forward. Marcus didn't move. B123. The officer repeated. We need to speak with you. Marcus kept his hands at his sides and spoke carefully. I'm not resisting. Just tell me what this is. A pause. Then the heavy officer, the same one from the previous inspection, spoke quietly through the door. You've been selected. Marcus's pulse kicked. For what? For evaluation, the officer replied. The word hit harder than he expected. In the SHU, evaluation didn't mean therapy. It didn't mean conversation. It meant they were measuring something: behavior, loyalty, influence, vulnerability. A test he didn't sign up for. The slot slid open again. But no tray was pushed through this time. Just a single sheet of folded paper. Marcus stared at it. He hadn't seen paper in years. Not loose paper. At least, not something that could be written on. Inmates didn't get random sheets slid through slots unless it was legal mail or disciplinary form. He picked it up, unfolded it, and froze. On the paper was a list. A short list. 3 cell numbers. B119. B122. B123. His cell. 3 men. 3 trays marked that night. 3 targets, according to the voice in the vent. At the bottom of the page was a line of text. Identify cooperation level by morning rotation. Marcus's stomach clenched. Cooperation? He folded the paper again, hands shaking. The heavy officer's voice came back through the slot. You know what this means. Marcus didn't answer. You talk to us. We help you. The officer continued. You keep quiet. You go on the list for Phase 2. Marcus's throat tightened. Phase 2. He didn't need details. The tone told him enough. The slot slammed shut. The boots walked away. But the red light over the door didn't tone off. The vent above his head came alive again. So, the voice said calmly, they've given you the paper. Marcus looked up sharply. How do you know about it? I've been through this before, the voice whispered. Years ago. Marcus stepped closer. Then tell me how to stop it. You can't stop it, the voice replied. But you can survive it. How? By understanding what the list really means. Marcus unfolded the paper again, staring at the 3 cell numbers. What does it mean? He asked. It means, the voice said slowly, the prison thinks one of you is dangerous. Not violent dangerous. Influence dangerous. One of you has the mind to organize, to resist, to spread ideas. Eli's voice cut in from below. They are picking who to isolate, who to break first. The upper voice responded. No, they are picking who other inmates will turn on. Marcus felt something cold slide down his spine. Why me? He asked. I don't talk to anyone. I don't leave my cell. I don't have any power. That's what you think, the voice replied. Do you know how leadership works in a place like this? It's not about who speaks the loudest. A pause. It's about who stays calm when the system shifts. And tonight, you stayed calm. Marcus didn't feel calm. He felt like a pinned insect. The voice continued. The others on the list, B119 and B122, they're not calm. They're loud. They scream. They complain. They lash out. The prison won't break from them. Another pause. But you? You think. You analyze. They see potential in that. In the darkness, Marcus exhaled slowly. Voices from down the tier were rising again, men yelling, demanding food, demanding answers. Trays were being kicked against cell doors. Fists were pounding on metal, all while a full breakfast tray sat untouched in Marcus's cell. Eli whispered, almost afraid to say it. They are setting you up. The voice above added, they feed you more. They starve everyone else. They wait for resentment to grow. Then they see if you break, or if the tier breaks you. Marcus looked down at the tray again. Warm eggs, fresh toast, cake, poisoned by another name. He ran a hand over his face, trying to think. What about the list? Marcus asked, what does cooperation level mean? The upper voice grew quiet. Tomorrow morning, it finally said, they'll ask you questions. They'll want to know if you've noticed changes, if you've heard anything, if you've talked to anyone. They want to see if you'll give them information. Marcus shook his head. I don't know anything. That doesn't matter, the voice whispered. They'll press anyway. If you say too little, they'll say you're hiding something. If you say too much, they'll think you're manipulating. There's no safe answer. Marcus sat down on the bunk, paper still in his hand. So what do I do? He asked. The voice leaned closer to the vent. You make a choice. Marcus closed his eyes. What choice? Do you become part of their system, the voice said slowly, or do you become part of ours? Something in the tone made Marcus look up sharply. Ours? He asked. Eli whispered immediately. Don't listen to him. But the upper voice ignored him. You're not the first man they mocked. It continued. You won't be the last, but you can be the one who decides how this goes. Marcus swallowed. What are you saying? I'm saying, the voice whispered, there are men in here who want to push back, quietly, smartly, the same way we did in 2011 and 2013. Same belief, same pressure, same weapon. A pause. Hunger. Marcus felt the world tilt again. Are you asking me to refuse the food? He asked. I'm asking you to understand what refusing it means, the voice replied. It's not about your stomach. It's about what message it sends to them. And what message is that? Marcus asked. That you won't be divided, the voice said. That you won't be turned into their tool. That you know what they are doing. Eli cut in sharply. Don't do it. B123. You don't want to end up like the last guy who refused selective trays. They disappeared him into observation for 2 months. He came back a different man. The upper voice shot back, and he still stood for something. Marcus felt his chest tighten. He wasn't a leader. He wasn't a rebel. He wasn't a fighter. He was a man who wanted to survive. With a full breakfast tray glowing warm in the dim light and the chaos of starving inmates echoing down the tier, he suddenly realized something. Whatever he chose next would decide everything. He looked back at the tray, then at the paper in his hand, then at the door. A shadow appeared beneath it, boots returning. Morning evaluation had come early. Cut to black. Tying everything together. What happened inside Pelican Bay that night wasn't random. It wasn't accidental. And it wasn't about food at all. It was about control. Because in a place built to strip men of their freedom, the meal trays became something far more dangerous than nutrition. They became messages, signals, tools to divide, tools to pressure, tools to test who would break and who would rise. Marcus wasn't a leader. He wasn't an organizer. He wasn't part of any movement. But Pelican Bay didn't care who he thought he was. It cared who he could become. And in the security housing unit, where silence is policy, isolation is punishment, and survival is a daily calculation, even one extra scoop of food can rewrite the entire balance of power. As the officers stepped toward his door with that silent evaluation waiting, Marcus knew he stood at the edge of a decision that could change everything. Would he cooperate? Would he resist? Would he break? Or would the system break first? In Pelican Bay, the answer always starts with a tray. Asterisk, asterisk, this is where we pause, because the next move belongs to Marcus. And whatever he chooses, one truth remains. Food doesn't just feed men in Pelican Bay. It controls them. It divides them. It defines them. And sometimes, it decides who survives the asterisk, asterisk.